The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre to you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to let your friends know about Living Zen. If you'd like to support our community, download the Living Zen-podcast app for iPod, iPhone, and Android. One of the most meaningful ways to show your support is by becoming a part of our Sangha as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen podcast and our online e-Zendo will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at zenwest.ca and click on Become an Associate. Many more Zen Talks are available for purchase on iTunes and Amazon.com. Just search for Venerable Eshu Martin. These talks are also available for free on our website to all members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Just as I was sitting down, I heard a robin. It's nice to hear robins in the evening. It must be spring. Though you wouldn't know it today. At least not out in Souk. I wanted to talk about something that I've actually heard come up a few times during the question period, or even in the introductory circle that we have after the sit. And it's one of the most frequently misunderstood teachings of Buddhism and Zen, and can lead to a lot of quite serious problems if we practice with a kind of misunderstanding of this particular teaching. I've been hitting this issue fairly hard in the Zen Centre, so I want to apologize for the repetition to the members who hear it on Sunday, and they hear it on Tuesday, and they hear it on Sunday again. So this, what I want to talk about is this teaching of no self that we hear about in Buddhism, anatman in Sanskrit, or anatta in Pali. I hear some people saying when we go around the circle that they've come to get rid of self, get rid of themselves. And I want to be very careful when we approach this teaching. Because if we take it as being an extermination of the manifestation, the extermination of distinction, distinctness, we can get into very dangerous water very quickly. Nihilism. We can become very depressed, and we get what's called emptiness, sickness. We have to apologize, because when there is no self, then certainly there is no such thing as mine and yours, and it won't matter much if that's my wallet or your wallet. We're all one. No self. So I like to use to explain this teaching a very well-worn metaphor. And this is of the ocean. So I want you all to take a moment and just imagine yourselves in the midst of the deep ocean, riding on great big waves. Maybe Ian, you can imagine this better than some of us. But so here we are in the ocean, and the ocean has two aspects. One is this activity of rising and falling, which takes place on the surface that we call waves. And the other aspect is in the depth and stillness, the unified wholeness of the body of the ocean. Now we look at these two aspects, this rising and falling, and this absolute, all-embracing depth. And we have no problem understanding that this is one thing that has two aspects, two ways of being, two manifestations. One side is completely unified, completely uniform, bottomless, broad. The other is constantly in motion, constantly transforming, big waves and little waves, waves going this way and that. Now, we call these two aspects together the ocean. But if we were to try and get rid of one or the other, it would seem quite absurd. If we were out in the middle of the ocean in our imagination and suddenly all motion, all signs of waves or ripples or direction, movement of any kind were just disappeared, and all we were left with was the depth, could we still call it ocean? Likewise, if we eliminated all of the depth and breadth and left only the activity on the top, could we call it ocean? Now, when we approach practice, a lot of the times, we're entirely focused on differentiation. We're entirely focused on what we call self, I. When we grow up in this culture, and many cultures, all cultures, there's a tremendous focus on developing as an individual, amassing as an individual, improving as an individual. And we spend a tremendous amount of our time pursuing things that we perceive as being outside of ourselves, as being things that if we can only grasp, if we can only possess, if we can only obtain, then somehow we as individuals expand. And by comparison with all of the other individuals, we somehow are better for it. Likewise, we spend a lot of time trying to avoid things that we feel will diminish us, that will take away from us. And this is how we view our lives, as people and things and environments, relationships, situations, as being fundamentally separate. Each of them being fundamentally fixed, fundamentally isolated, and separate from one another. Occasionally we bump into one another, we gain something or we lose something, but we're separate. Once in a while, we're engaged in an activity, usually something that we like, whether it's riding our bike or playing an instrument, doing some kind of art, making love. And we have this glimpse. We have this momentary experience of unification in which the boundary between subject and object, self and other, is blurred or even drops away completely. And self and other merge into a unified whole, and it's a very powerful experience. And it usually continues until such time as we think, oh, this is an amazing experience. And suddenly we find ourselves back in the world of subject and object. What Zen points to, what this teaching of anatta or anatman points to, is that this unified whole is another aspect of existence, another aspect of being, manifesting in this cosmos. And so because all of our lives are spent living from this perspective of separate things bumping into one another, particularly at the beginning of our Buddhist study and our Buddhist practice, there's an emphasis on the experience of the unified whole, dissolution, emptiness, shunyata. So to carry the metaphor of the ocean forward, we come into this life, and all through our lives we spend a great deal of time paying attention to the waves. How big are the waves? How far apart are the waves? How fast are the waves traveling and in which direction? And we're always worried about, am I the biggest wave? What can I do to become a bigger wave? Because I'm a bigger wave or a faster wave, I'm a better wave. We notice that waves get bigger and smaller, but we always identify as this particular wave. And we can see waves completely disappearing, dropping away. And we can even say, oh, that wave was impermanent. That wave died out. That wave wasn't good enough. But we never for a moment stop to think about this activity also being our activity. Then we have these experiences, these brief experiences in which we ourselves, this sense of separateness, this sense of distinction, this sense of self, drops away and we experience the vast completion of the depths of the ocean, just as I was speaking about. What we don't realize is that the wave that we were, this manifestation, this person, this self that we were, has dropped away, and we experience completion. That self that we were has died. We are changed by the experience of unification. But just as the wave does not stay there, just as the ocean, having swallowed up a wave, does not calm forever, another wave is born. In the next thought moment, we arise again. The self, a new self, manifests. The mistake that we make is to think that this self that's arising, being born, is the same as the self that pre-existed, the self that was before. When we talk about no self, it's a mistake to think that what we're trying to do is calm the ocean. What we're trying to do is eliminate the manifestation of distinction, to eliminate the manifestation of perspective, to eliminate the wonderful diversity that we see in this cosmos being manifested all the time. If we pursue that end, if we pursue the destruction, the elimination of this manifestation, we will become very frustrated. We will become very disappointed in ourselves, because no matter how deep our meditation is, no matter how fully we're able to dissolve, somehow or other, once again, self is born. My teacher used to say that in the manifestation of unification, oneness, there are no washrooms, there are no restaurants, you can't stay there. We are born again. This is not the teaching of no self, to eliminate the manifestation. The challenge, this teaching of anatman, lies in our fixation with thinking that we are something fixed. Lies in our fixation of thinking that we are something consistent, that there is some aspect of us which maintains or exists from moment to moment, from manifestation to manifestation, from wave to wave. When we get stuck on an idea like, I'm this kind of person, or I'm that kind of person, I like this, or I don't like that, we begin to attach to an idea of there being something in this cosmos which is solid, fixed, and separate. When we collect a bunch of these ideas, we like to pull them all together and call it self. And it's not just myself, but we impute that self into all kinds of objects around it. We say, oh, the table is a table, and statue is a statue, and the candle is a candle, and the flower is a flower, and the cushion is a cushion. And we give each of those things a self, an idea that it is a distinct, fixed, lasting object. But when we investigate this habit that we have, we find that this is a lie. This is an untruth. This person that I am today has no component, no thought, no emotion, not a single cell which is consistent, which is the same as this person that I called self 20 years ago. Not a single cell. When I look at these flowers and I take them as an object, this is a lie. These flowers are an activity, arising from seed, blended together with causes and conditions. They are an activity, a wave that's taking place right in front of me. An activity which, if I come back in an hour, 2 hours, or a day, will be completely different. No aspect of these flowers will remain. When we talk about no self, anatman, in Zen, it is not the denial of distinction. It is not the denial of individuality. It is not the attempt to crush my opinion or my perspective, but to recognize, to understand that these are not things. These are not objects. In fact, it is to recognize that in this vast cosmos, there is no object. There is no self. There is no fixed, permanent, separate entity, essence, or thing. All of this stuff across this vast cosmos is activity. All of this stuff is not different than this ocean in which things arise and dissolve back into unification over and over again, simply manifesting these two activities over and over, arising and manifesting in distinction, dissolving, disappearing, unifying into oneness. This is a very subtle but utterly crucial aspect of Zen practice, of Buddhism. That when we practice, it is not differentiation. It is not the flower or the bus or the me that we're looking to let go of, but the idea of thingness. Atman, this word Atman, means thingness, soul, essence. That outside of the elements, the constituents, the components of anything in this cosmos, there is some essence that exists. This teaching of Anatman says, no. Investigate it. Look for yourself. Expend every ounce of energy on examining the activity that is you. That is you. Examine the activity that is this cosmos. It is the Dharma activity. Perhaps I've gone on a little bit long, so I'll end there. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.